Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. I was recently sent, don't you say a word. You're why I'm recording this again. Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. I was sent an article recently by somebody from Europe asking what I think on the topic of planned obsolescence in France. Now, this article does appear to be an article that is not necessarily from the most credible of places. They're talking about a law that came out over I think 11 years ago, and the news article is dated a few days ago. It does seem that this is based on an AI-generated post from Grok. I understand when Europeans are sending me articles that you're not really, not only do you put the date the wrong way, as I mentioned in the last video, but your media literacy may be a little bit lacking. We have laws about things being fair and balanced in America. I personally get all of my news from Fox and MSNBC, which is how I know that I'm listening to something that is no bias, that is always correct all the time. But I'll accept the fact that not all of you do that. So I'm going to read this article, and it's talking about a law that came out 11 years ago against planned obsolescence, and give you my thoughts, because even if this is not necessarily a new law, in the EU, there are a lot of initiatives that are moving against planned obsolescence in general, and these initiatives that are moving against planned obsolescence in general are most likely going to be modeled after this type of legislation that was created in France. And I want to talk about some of the problems that I see and some of the difficulties that you may have when trying to implement it, and also try to start a general conversation about what planned obsolescence actually is. Under French law, manufacturers are prohibited from intentionally shortening a device's lifespan or making it unnecessarily difficult to repair without justified reason. The legislation shifts planned obsolescence from being viewed as a controversial market practice to being treated as a criminal offense. Now, this is something that I am a fan of in spirit, because like many of you, I think planned obsolescence is bullshit, and I don't want to deal with a society where everything is made to be throwaway, or devices just do this thing where, oh, you haven't given us enough money recently. The thing that you bought and paid for $400 is now a subscription. It annoys me very much. The problem that I think many are going to run into here is, what is planned obsolescence? Who decides what planned obsolescence is? And at what point does a company get in trouble for it? Now, you may think this is easy, obvious, and it's one of those things that reminds me of this quote from the 70s, something like, I can't define porn, but I can tell you but I know it when I see it. And something as similar is true for planned obsolescence. For instance, let's take plastic vehicle parts. You'll see lots of plastic engine parts in cars. You'll see a lot of people say that that's planned obsolescence because the car used to be able to last over 200,000 or 300,000 miles without those parts dying. And then now, a lot of the times, some of these plastic engine parts will last for 60 to 120,000 miles before they have to be replaced, and often there's really no warning, they just die. And there are other people that will say that no, that's to make the car lighter, that's to make the car more efficient to produce. That's why you're able to get a car at a similar price now that you could in the past, even though inflation has gone up. There's fights going on over this. Here, this guy has a fairly good point, which is this is a V8, which is going to make a decent amount of heat. It's a very small engine bay. There's no airflow, and you're using plastic. Is that planned obsolescence? Is it only planned obsolescence when a car with plastic engine parts or plastic engine parts is known regularly for failing? And at that point, is it planned obsolescence, or is it a design defect? One example of this, when it comes to Apple boards. This is a device where they put the line responsible for screen image data right next to the line for screen backlight power. So you have a 50-volt backlight line next to a 1.7-volt data line going to the CPU. What do you think is going to happen when this thing over here that is not protected at all, that's right next to the intake section and a fan, if you're in a humid environment? You're going to wind up with corrosion over there, and you're going to wind up with 50 volts going straight to your CPU. Now, is this planned obsolescence, or is that a design defect because of a mistake? See, over here, you have a thing set up where I believe they had pin 1. I went over it in the video. I'm not going to watch the whole thing now. But it was something like pin 1 was data, and pin 43 is backlight, or something like that. The whole idea is they were supposed to be as far away from each other as possible. But you have a rectangular connector. So if this is pin 1, and you put pin 43 is supposed to be the thing that's supposed to be all the way far away, well, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 41, 42, 43, and now they're right next to each other. Whoopsie, I can understand how this mistake would happen if the person who's doing the PC board layout did not talk to the person who actually did the circuit design. A lot of how this works at modern companies is the design and the engineering teams are compartmentalized. They may be totally separate from one another. They may not understand why the other person did this the way they did it, and then you end up with this clusterfucking disaster. Now, in 2016, that's a design defect. Where I would personally call it planned obsolescence, and this is my opinion, is when you get to be 4 years later and your flagship machine still has the same fucking defect. Now, that may not even be planned obsolescence. That could simply be negligence. You're negligent. You've made this mistake before, and you're continuing to make this mistake again, but not because you planned it, but just because you were busy doing other things. You were talking about the Apple car, you wanted to make the new iPhone, you wanted to make Siri better, and because you have all these other things you're working on, you weren't really focusing on this. And frankly, it looks like liquid damage on those machines anyway, and do we really care about making machines better for those careless people that spill coffee on their shit? You idiot, stop spilling crap on your computer. But that doesn't happen to almost any other model of laptop that I know. when there's no water damage anywhere else in the device. And even when they do fail, they don't send 50 volts to the CPU. An overclock that even Steve at Gamers Nexus is not going to recover from. What about this over here when they decided to change the diagnostics you get at boot? So they used to provide you with something that was really useful. There used to be this thing called Apple Service Diagnostic. Now, granted, this is not something that they would get provided with the computer. This is something that repair shops would get access to, and then they would round up releasing it on web forums, and then people like me would get it and would tell you which sensor failed so you could get a proper diagnostic of the machine. Newer devices that were released with something that was way more useless. You needed to be able to connect to Apple servers in order to use their diagnostic tools because they did not want repair shops to be able to run ASD without getting it from them. So you would get something that gave you an error like PFM006. Rather than telling you what sensor failed, it would say, there must be an issue with the SMC. Contact Apple or take your computer to an AASP. So we went from a system that makes it fairly simple for you to tell when something failed. I could download the tool online, to a system where you give me a useless error code that doesn't tell me anything useful. Again, XYZ sensor has failed is much more useful to me than there may be an issue with the system management, and take your computer to the Apple Store. I call this planned obsolescence. And the older me can look back at this video that I made 11 years ago. I used to have hair back then. And honestly say, is that planned obsolescence? I was using a pirated tool to get access to the sensor that failed anyway. Just because I don't have access to a pirated tool on the new one, because they decided to start making it available only to Apple authorized service providers, having them connect to their server first to make sure that I didn't have it. Is that really planned obsolescence, or is that just them making sure that authorized repair providers are getting access to their thing and that I'm not using a pirated tool? Also, if I knew better, I could have used terminal commands to get access to the sensors. I didn't know how to do that back then. Now, granted, they did not make my job easier, but is that planned obsolescence? Now, you may say, of course it's planned obsolescence. They know that they're making it harder. Fuck that. But the point is that there's an argument to be had here. Just because I didn't know the terminal command to get access to the sensor, to be clear, I still fixed the device anyway. But just because I don't know the terminal command to get access to the sensor, does that mean that they plan the obsolescence? Or does that just simply mean that my job is harder? There are many times that my job is made harder simply by the fact that things evolve and things are confusing and the manufacturer may not provide the best documentation. At what point does it become criminal? And that's why it's very, very difficult to try and legislate things like don't be a dick. So there are certain items that I think are very easy to legislate. For instance, Miku. This company made a baby monitor, and the baby monitor was sold with certain features. Most people buy cheap-ass baby monitors. This baby monitor was something like $300 or $400, and the reason you were paying extra is because you got a lot of features. Then, when somebody bought the company, they sent out an email to everybody saying, hey, you know those features that were advertised with the product that you got sold from the company that we purchased? They're not going to work anymore unless you pay us a monthly fee. That's a direct change of the terms of the sale. That's easy to identify. You sold a product and it was marketed at having this feature. Nowhere in the marketing did you ever fucking say that there would be a surcharge later on. You are taking that feature away from me, and now you are telling me if I want that feature, I have to pay. This is easy. Planned obsolescence, again, there are people that are going to say, well, you're making the car with these type of plastic parts and this and that and the other in order to make it a more lightweight car, a safer car, an easier to manufacture car, a more streamlined car. We can make more of them this way. We can make more of them cheaper so people are happier. But there are other people that are going to say, just bullshit, you're just doing that to cheap out. And there's going to be a debate about it. And it's going to be difficult to figure out what planned obsolescence is unless you have a very, very, very strict definition of it and some pretty smart people that are actually willing to dig into the depths and figure out what that is. And, frankly, the reason that I am concerned about that is because I did a video on this channel on something that was simple. This video, does California enforce its own laws? Help me find out. I'm talking about a company that was selling something, and they were selling something saying that you own it, you bought it, but then in the fine print, even if you bought a lifetime license, it says up to 5 years, and they can revoke it even before them. So I asked everybody to contact the Attorney General in the state of California and say, look, this company is violating your law on digital ownership. And this is not something where there's a gray area of was this really planned obsolescence, or was it just me making it a little cheaper? Was it planned obsolescence or a design flaw? Was it planned obsolescence or Lewis doesn't know how to use a terminal? This was just clear cut, clear as day. And regardless of what anybody in my audience wants to say, California is one of the strictest states in the United States when it comes to consumer protection. And they got bupkis. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And this is where there's no arguments to be had. So I'm curious to see how this law is going to work out in France. Again, my personal opinion on the matter, This is not planned obsolescence. This is a design defect. That doesn't mean it's right. I still think that Apple should be held accountable and responsible for this, and they should be offering you a discount or repair rather than saying $700 to $1,000 every time you show up with this if your device has no sign of liquid damage anywhere else. That's a design defect. This, I'm much closer to the argument on that being planned obsolescence, because you know this is a fucking design defect because you've had 40 years of people showing up with that product and you still just keep doing it. And again, at what point, this is a good conversation point, at what point is negligence planned obsolescence in and of itself? There are many things in life where I can pretend that I'm not doing something wrong by just not looking at what is actually happening. You know, there's a video I did on my throwaway channel. This video is titled "Becoming the Villain is Way Easier Than You Think," and I give you some examples from my own company where it would be very easy for me to pretend that I'm the good guy and actually pretend that I'm helping you while I'm screwing you, and trying to keep my conscience clean by just not looking at something that I should be looking at. There are a lot of items as a business owner that I have to deal with at any given time and that I have to be looking at any given time. And it's very easy for me to make an excuse for I have so many things I'm looking at, that little problem over there, I'm just not going to look at it. But by not looking at it, I avoid becoming accountable and responsible for what's going on, at least in my own mind. There's 30 people that have asked about getting double billed. Well, is there a bug? If I don't look into it, I can just say, just refund everybody that complains about getting double billed. But what if I'm double billing everybody and only 20% of them are complaining about it? And I don't know about that because I didn't look into the code. And I don't look into the code because I got other stuff to do. It's really easy to come up with these plausible explanations for why things are the case. Then there's the other side of the coin where you'll have people saying that's planned obsolescence simply because they bought something that is 1/10 the price of what the usual product is in that particular vertical, and then complains when they only get 7 years out of it instead of 10. Because I've seen that before on Reddit. I've seen people say that, Lewis, you're a conspiracy theorist. There's not just a bunch of people smoking cigars in a room trying to figure out a way to screw the consumer. And it's like, the thing that I think they're missing is that it doesn't really matter at that point. The point that I'm explaining in this video is whether it's a design, I don't care. Once you get to this point, the negligence becomes malicious once you get to the point where you're ignoring it many years later. It's a choice. It's a choice to ignore the problems that are right in front of you. And at what point do you start holding people accountable? I look forward to seeing France start holding companies accountable. Hopefully it happens here in the United States as well, but I won't hold my breath. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.